Hello friends, I hope you're doing well. So from today onwards, we'll be starting in Ncert Class 6 History, and the topic of the book is our past. So this book discusses a lot of interesting things from our glorious past, and we'll be discussing all the chapters one by one. So altogether there are 12 chapters in this book, and we'll be starting with the first chapter, that is what, where, how and when. So I hope you'll cooperate with me in following all the classes, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, then you can please subscribe and press the bell notification so that whenever I upload a new chapter you can get notified. So let's start today the first chapter, that is what, where, how and when. So friends, our first chapter begins with a question from a young girl. Her name is Rashida. So let's see what her question is about. So Rashida sat reading the newspaper. Suddenly her eyes fell on a small headline, 100 years ago? How, she wondered, could anyone know what had happened so many years ago? So Rashida is puzzled, like when she read the newspaper and it was telling a story about 100 years before, and she wondered, like, how can somebody know so many years before what happened? So let's find out what happened and what was her question all about. So yesterday you could listen to the radio, watch television, read a newspaper. Last year, ask somebody who remembers. But what about long, long ago? Let us see how it can be done. See, basically, like yesterday, you could listen to radio and also listen to a television, or watch television or read a newspaper. And if I ask you something about yesterday, you can remember some of the things, and you can tell me a lot of things. But last year, if something happens, you watch a radio or listen to a radio or watch a television or read a newspaper, and if I ask you something about that, then you'll be able to remember, say, 50% of the things, and 50% of the thing you'll forget. But what about long, long ago? See, some of the things, like we were not born, say, hardly we are all like 20, 30, or max 40 years old. And what about long, long ago? Like Rashida's question is like 100 years ago, isn't it? Rashida asked what happened 100 years ago. 100 years is a very long, long time, friends. So the question is, basic premise is, what can we know about the past? So what are the things we'll be knowing about the past? So that is a basic question. So friends, there are several things we can find out. What people ate, like whether they cooked food, or whether they bought it, or whether they derived it from nature, and the kind of clothes people wore 100 years back or before that, and the houses in which they lived. So these are the basic questions, like what they ate and the kind of clothes they were wearing, and the houses they lived. So we can find about the lives of hunters, herders, farmers, rulers, merchants, priests, craftspersons, artists, musicians, and scientists. So when you study about the ancient past, and we can know about how these people lived and what they ate, and where they lived, what are the houses made of, what material their clothes consisted of, and what food they ate. So that all we can know if you study the ancient past. We can also find out about the games children played, the stories they heard, the plays they saw, the songs they sang. Like children, like we also be wondering, like you most of you must be like nowadays watching games or on mobile, or you are watching television. But what about children 100 years back, when there was no mobile or no television? So and which games they played, and which stories they heard, like what kind of stories, who told them the stories, or how they heard the stories, and the plays they saw. Like most of you must be watching cartoon on television or mobile, Tom and Jerry or Tintin, or like that. But 100 years back, friends, there was no TVs and no movies and no mobiles. So the children, like you do, what they did during that time, so that needs to be known, and that you need to know. And the songs they sing, like nowadays all of you may be singing the modern songs that is played in the Hindi movies, or English Hollywood movies, or the songs, popular rhymes you may be singing. So what songs those children living 100 years back sang, so that you need to know, friends. So, friends, our next question is, where did people live? Like people 100 years or long, long ago, where did they live? So, people have lived along the banks of this river for several hundred thousand years. So, we are asked to find the Narmada, River Narmada on map 1. So, let's find it. So, children, here is the river Narmada, and you see just it originates from somewhere near Madhya Pradesh, and it flows towards Gujarat and then to the Arabian Sea. And this is the course of Narmada. So, what we are told that on the banks of this river, people lived for 100,000 years, for several, not 1 or 2 years, but for several 100,000 years, long, long time, and people lived on the banks of this river. Some of the earliest people who lived here were skilled gatherers, that is, people who gathered their food. And the early man who lived on the bank of this river, where what did they do? They were called gatherers. They collected food from the nature, like from the jungles and from the trees, and they ate the fruits, the roots, and the herbs, and they were called the gatherers. They knew about the vast wealth of plants in the surrounding forests and collected roots, fruits, and other forest produce for their food. So, as told, they they gathered the food from the forest, and they collected roots, fruits, and other forest produce for the food. They also hunted animals. So, man is omnivorous. You have heard, children, the term omnivore. 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 So, what is the term omnivore means? Is that man by nature can eat both plants and animals. Now, our next task is now find the Sulaiman and the Kirtar hills, and where these two hills are. It's said in the northwest. So let's find them. So, friends, here are the Sulaiman and the Kirtar hills. So, where are these two hills now located? This map is an ancient Indian map where India and Pakistan were the same country, but now these two hills are in the modern state of Pakistan. 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 All right. So, some of the areas where woman and man first began to grow crops such as wheat and barley about 8,000 years ago are located here. So, if you see the Suleiman and the Kirtar Hills region, so these are the areas where ancient man and woman grew what they grew, wheat and barley. And what is the time period? See, it is 8,000 years back, so it's long years back. And here it is said that the first man started cultivating or growing crops such as wheat and barley. People also began rearing animals like sheep, goat, and cattle and lived in villages. So, along with growing crops such as wheat and barley, this year people also started rearing animals. So, they started keeping the animals as pets. Like what animals? Like domestic cattle, like sheep, goat, and cattle. They started rearing, and they started living in villages. Means the people started living in groups or in societies. Now locate the Garo hills to the northeast and the Vindhyas in central India. So let's locate the Garo hills. See, this is the Garo hills. It's in the modern state of Meghalaya. In the northeast of India, the state, hilly state of very beautiful state of Meghalaya, and its capital is. You can write in the comment section what is the capital of Meghalaya. So, children, here and next we need to locate the Vindhyas in central India. So, this is the Vindhyas. All right. So we have located it. These were some of the other areas where agriculture developed. So, along with the Suleiman and Kittar Hills region in modern day Pakistan, we have in mainland India in Garo Hills and the Vindhyas where agriculture started. People started cultivating crops like wheat, barley, rice, etc. The places where rice was first grown are the north of the Vindhyas. Now, this Vindhyas area, this area and the north of this area, the first rice cultivation started. So, now trace the river Indus and its tributaries. So, what are tributaries? Tributaries are smaller rivers that flow into a larger river. Now, we need to locate the Indus. Okay, so let's locate. So friends, this is the Indus River. Again, this river is again in the modern state of Pakistan. All right. So, we are required to locate its tributaries, the Indus River's tributaries. And what are tributaries, friends? So tributaries are smaller rivers that connect to this to the big river. And the tributaries of Indus River are the Sutlej, the Ravi, the Chenab, the Jhelum. So these are some of the tributaries of the Indus River. So about 4,700 years ago, some of the earliest cities flourished on the banks of these rivers. So you can know that we had a glorious civilization called the Indus Valley civilization, and that flourished on the bank of this river. And this civilization, when you study, you will know that it had lot of glorious cities and towns and roads and well structured houses. So it flourished on the banks of this river. And later, and it happened, it's say about 4,700 years ago. And later, about 2,500 years ago, cities developed on the banks of the Ganga and its tributaries. So from 2,500 years ago, we had cities developed on the banks of Ganga. Here the river Ganga is. Now locate the Ganga and its tributary called the Son. So we are supposed to locate Ganga and its tributary, the Son river. So let's find out. So friends, here is the Ganga and its tributary, the Son river. In ancient times, the area along these rivers to the south of the Ganga was known as Magadha. Its rulers were very powerful and set up a large kingdom. Kingdoms were set up in other parts of the country as well. So, the area to the south of Ganga was known as the ancient kingdom of Magadha, and its rulers were very powerful, and it was a very large kingdom. So let's locate on the map. So it's said that somewhere here in the south of this river, the ancient kingdom of Magadha was located, and it's a very powerful kingdom, and it also was one of the largest kingdoms in ancient India. And kingdoms were also set up in other parts of the country as well, like the Vijayanagar kingdom, and the other kingdoms were also set up. Throughout, people traveled from one part of the subcontinent to another. The hills and high mountains, including the Himalayas, deserts, rivers, and seas, made journeys dangerous at times but never impossible. So, people like from ancient past traveled from one part of the subcontinent. And what is subcontinent, friends? The South Asia is often called a subcontinent because although it is smaller than a continent, it is very large and is separated from the rest of Asia by seas, hills, and mountains. So, the South Asian region, like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and all the like Myanmar, Bhutan, all this consists South Asia because it almost is, and it's also called a subcontinent because it's almost like a continent, and it's a very big area. So people traveled from one part of the subcontinent to another, but there were hills like the mighty Himalayas and a lot of other hills and high mountains, and including Himalayas there is deserts like the Thar desert is there, and the Gobi in China, and seas made journeys dangerous at times but never impossible. So although there was impediments, there was like jungles, hills and mountains, people still traveled from one part of subcontinent to other part. So man and woman moved in search of livelihood and also to escape from natural disasters like floods or droughts. So the question is why man traveled from one part of the subcontinent to other part, or from one part of the world to other part, and the main thing is in search of livelihood and also to escape from natural calamities like floods or droughts. Say a area which is submerged by flood, then people have to escape and go to some other area where there was no flood. And similarly, if there was drought, like there is no rain for a long time, then people will die of hunger because there will be no crop during the period of drought. So people have to migrate to an area where there is rain. So a lot of people migrated from a flood prone area to uh, a dry area, and similarly people migrated from a drought prone area to area where there is no drought, where there is rain, plenty of rain. So a lot of natural calamities and livelihood are the two reasons people migrated from one place to another. Sometimes man marched in armies conquering other lands. Besides, merchants traveled with caravans or ships carrying valuable goods from place to place. So sometimes king like they marched with their armies and they conquered other lands in order to increase the area of their region or the kingdom. And also people traveled like the merchants who sold, like they traveled in caravans in groups, and they or they can traveled in ships, and they carried valuable goods to sail. Say they travel from the Arabian Peninsula and they come in ships to India, and they sold the gold and jewelry to India, and they took in exchange the spices from India. So like a lot of merchants from different parts of the world came to India in search of livelihood or in search of trade. And similarly a lot of kings also invaded different parts of India to expand their empires, like Alexander, and also you have Babur or Genghis Khan from Mongolia. They all invaded India. So a lot of traders, people either moved for trade or they conquered new countries to expand their kingdom. So these are the ways how people moved from one part of the world to another. And religious teachers walked from village to village, town to town, stopping to offer instruction and advice on the way. Similarly, those who were the religious teachers like Kabir or Chaitanya or Guru Nanak Dev Ji. So they all they walked from village to village and town to town. And why they traveled? They traveled to advise people, to instruct people to live a good way, to live a good life. And they traveled. And like this way, people moved from one place to another. Finally, some people perhaps travel driven by a spirit of adventure, wanting to discover new and exciting places. All this led to the sharing of ideas between people. So also we have example like people like Columbus, Christopher Columbus, or Marco Polo. Marco Polo. They all traveled from one part of the world to another to discover new places, to to know different cultures, to know different people, and to share ideas. So in these are the different ways so how people moved from one place to another in ancient times. So now you will be able to answer why people moved from different places, from one place to another, and what are the reasons? So, why do you travel nowadays? The question is, why nowadays people travel? So, you can answer it.